Some 300 South Koreans detained in the U.S. are set to return on a flight home as early as Wednesday local time. Seoul's top diplomat Jong-un will finalize arrangements for their safe return home and discuss fundamental U.S. visa solutions with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Tuesday. President Lee Jae-myung has once again stressed the importance of stabilizing grocery prices and called for bold measures to tame inflation. North Korea claims to have tested a new missile engine. Experts believe the North could unveil a new intercontinental ballistic missile as soon as the upcoming October 10th anniversary of the Workers' Party of Korea. The government is working for a swift return of Koreans arrested at Hyundai's Georgia plant in the U.S. through a chartered flight as early as Wednesday local time. Now, beyond this issue, Seoul will seek improvements in visa issues with the U.S., and President Lee Jae-myung has raised the need for such developments. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
Around 300 South Koreans detained in the United States are expected to board a chartered flight home within the next day. A foreign ministry official told reporters on Tuesday that a chartered plane is being arranged to bring back Korean nationals from Georgia after they were arrested en masse last Thursday at a Hyundai LG battery plant. The government is aiming for a departure on Wednesday local time and is currently coordinating the details with business officials and the airline involved. According to sources in the aviation sector, a Korean Air aircraft is expected to depart Atlanta late in the afternoon and arrive at Korea's Incheon airport late on Thursday Korea time. The released Koreans will first be transported from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Detention Center in southern Georgia and travel some 428 kilometers to catch their charter flight. After a weekend of negotiations, Seoul said Monday it secured the early release and return of detainees through their voluntary departure. To ensure their smooth release, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun arrived in Washington, D.C. on Monday local time with a rapid response team from Seoul. Cho will likely meet with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other senior Trump administration officials on Tuesday. He's expected to press Washington to ensure that the returning workers will not face penalties such as bans on re-entry to the U.S. The minister has also emphasized he will address broader visa issues affecting Korean firms investing in America. This could include creating a new professional visa category for Korean nationals, so companies can dispatch essential staff to the U.S. more smoothly. Cho is also expected to stress that Korean firms have already made large-scale investments in the U.S. and that future projects depend on stable conditions. The raid last week by U.S. immigration authorities took place at a factory that's part of Hyundai's $12.6 billion investment in Georgia, known to be the largest economic development project in the state's history. President Lee Jae-myung at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday also pushed for a systematic solution.
한미 양국의 동반 발전을 위한 우리 국민과 기업의 활동에 부당한 침해가 가해지는 일이 다시는 재발하지 않기를 바랍니다. 우리 정부는 유사한 사례가 반복되지 않도록 미국과의 긴밀한 협의를 통해 합리적 제도 개선을 신속하게 추진해 나가겠습니다.
In light of the recent arrests, Korean firms have raised concerns over their future business in America, while public sentiment has also been unsettled. A survey by Realmeter conducted this week found 6 in 10 Koreans find the mass arrest at the US plant disappointing and excessive.
Time is of the essence. How quickly and effectively this crisis is resolved between the two allied nations could directly influence Korean public sentiment, not to mention the future of Korean investments in the United States. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung held a cabinet meeting today, which was broadcast live and full to tamp down higher grocery prices. Also discussed were ways to boost the economy, for which the cabinet seeks to bring in more foreign visitors. Yoon Jung-min reports.
민생 안정을 위해서는 구조적인 장바구니 물가 불안이 반드시 해소돼야 합니다. 소비자와 생산자가 모두 체감할 수 있도록 불합리한 유통구조 개혁에 보다 속도를 내주시기 바랍니다.
That was a core message delivered by President Lee Jae-myung during a weekly cabinet meeting on Tuesday, as taking care of the people's livelihoods has become the single most visited topic for the president ahead of his first 100 days in office. He noted that the complicated distribution process pushes grocery prices up, and the 2-hour-long discussion, which was broadcast live in full, largely focused on tamping down prices.
We need to shift toward a smart distribution structure. We aim for a transition where about 50% of transactions are made through an online wholesale market.
One of the ideas pitched to address the problem was creating an online or mobile platform using AI, where people can easily compare prices.
정부가 투자하고 민간도 일부 투자하고 해서 플랫폼 하나 만들어서 농산물 거래 시스템을 새로 만들 수도 있는 거 아니에요?
The focus was also on boosting the economy, for which tourism was highlighted, with the aim of bringing in more than 30 million foreign visitors to the country, not just to Seoul, but areas outside the capital. Part of the action plan includes creating tourism products on a large scale that can attract foreigners.
We will renew our tourism resources and content that each region owns and make the most of the influence of K-culture. K-pop Demon Hunters has attracted so many tourists to Namsan and Bukchon, Hanok Village.
But the ugly side of society was also pointed out by the president.
관광객을 늘려야 되는데 얼마 전에 어디 그 기사를 보니까 특정 국가 관광객을 모욕하는 집회를 하고 있던데.
He was referring to controversial rallies led by far-rightists in Myeongdong, where the Chinese embassy is located, insulting China and tourists from that country. The president instructed the officials to come up with measures to ban those, while calling for the need to focus on promoting K-food and K-beauty among high-value-added industries. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The overall economic downturn in South Korea has somewhat softened in recent weeks, driven largely by consumer spending. Park Jun-han has the details.
South Korea's economy is experiencing a slight easing of its slowdown, primarily driven by consumer spending, despite persistent weaknesses in construction investment and prevalent global trade risks. This is according to the monthly report released Tuesday by the state-run think tank, the Korea Development Institute, analyzing the nation's economy. All industry production rose 1.9% in July from a year earlier. However, despite the increase, construction remained weak, and manufacturing capacity utilization stayed low, resulting in a 14.2% drop from the same period last year. Industrial production in July, which includes mining and manufacturing, rose 5% year-on-year. Notably, semiconductor output jumped 20.5%, while motor vehicles and electronic parts also posted gains from a year earlier. Exports to the U.S. in August underperformed as they declined by 8.1% year-on-year. Despite strong semiconductor shipments, exports were dragged down by motor vehicles and parts and steel, which are subject to high tariffs.
Export fluctuations depend on whether companies choose to raise prices to offset tariffs, but strategies have not yet been finalized. And in sectors like automobiles, tariffs have been agreed to be lowered but are not yet in effect. So, considerable uncertainty still remains.
In the meantime, the KDI pointed to signs of improved stability in the credit market and domestic consumption. Consumer sentiment, which is considered optimistic if it's over 100, remained strong at 111.4 for August, supported by falling market interest rates and the government stimulus, including a second round of supplementary budget and distribution of livelihood recovery consumption coupons. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has nominated veteran lawyer Wi Chul-hwan as one of the 9 commissioners of South Korea's National Election Commission. That is, according to Chief of Staff Kang Won-sik on Tuesday. Now, of the commission's 9 seats, 3 are appointed by the president, though they all require a confirmation hearing and approval at the National Assembly. The president's office also announced the creation of a commission on pop culture exchange, which will be co-led by Culture Minister Choi Hee-young and K-pop producer Park Jin-young. Gang described Bak as one of Korea's leading artists who helped globalize K-pop, saying he'll work to further promote Korean culture abroad while broadening cultural exchange at home. Now, another change at the president's office is the creation of a senior secretary for personnel affairs to strengthen internal vetting of public office candidates. The Lee Jae-myung administration and the ruling party have announced their government reorganization plan, featuring major dismantling and restructuring, and sparking a backlash from the opposition parties. For more on this, we turn to our political correspondent, Shin Ha-young. Welcome back, Ha-young.
Good evening.
So, Ha-young, why don't we go over with the key changes in the government reorganization plan? Walk us through them.
Well, one of the most notable changes is the dismantling of the prosecutor's office 70 years after its establishment in 1948. And the plan announced Sunday reflects the prosecution reform goals of the ruling Democratic Party, the government, and the presidential office. And under the plan, the prosecutor's office will be dismantled and replaced by two new agencies, one under the Justice Ministry handling indictments and another under the Interior Ministry handling investigations. And the changes will take effect 1 year after the plan is approved by the National Assembly and announced to the public, with a task force under the Prime Minister's office set up to work out the details of the reform.
Prosecution reform is one of the president's key pledges. There have been ongoing concerns that the prosecution has abused its unchecked power and undermined fairness, with selective investigations and arbitrary indictments deepening public distrust.
And reorganization will also affect the Finance Ministry, which will continue handling taxation, economic policy, and treasury matters, but budget planning will be transferred to a new agency under the Prime Minister's supervision. And the Environment Ministry will be expanded to take over energy policy responsibilities that are currently handled by the Industry Ministry. A new Deputy Prime Minister for Science and Technology will be created to oversee AI, and the Deputy Prime Minister for Social Affairs position held by the Education Minister will be abolished.
Now, Ha-young, I mentioned a strong backlash from the opposition parties. How is the ruling parties, what is the ruling party's plan going forward from here?
Well, first of all, the announcement of the government reorganization plan immediately sparked a backlash from the main opposition, People Power Party. And the PPP claimed it was not a reorganization, but rather the destruction of government. Take a listen.
This government reorganization plan that splits, dismantles, and adds agencies is a reckless experiment on the executive branch and our constitutional order.
And regarding prosecution reform, the PPP floor leader called it political retaliation against the prosecution for investigating Democratic Party figures, adding that if the Interior Ministry also takes control of the investigation agency, it could become a monster ministry. And despite the backlash, the ruling DP plans to pass the government reorganization plan in the National Assembly's plenary session later this month. And take a listen to what the DP leader had to say.
Reform is all about timing. This Chuseok holiday, we will share the good news that the prosecutor's office has been abolished and is now part of history.
And the DP leader also said that if the prosecution reform succeeds, it'll be thanks to President Lee Jae-myung's strong determination and leadership, adding that the party, government, and presidential office will work together as one to ensure a smooth follow-up.
So there's that, the ongoing political standoff between the rival parties. But in the meantime, President Lee Jae-myung did meet with the leaders of the two main parties here in South Korea. Ha-young, how did that go?
Well, yesterday's lunch meeting was indeed in the spotlight, and beforehand, tensions were so high that many wondered if the ruling and opposition leaders would even shake hands. But they met and were seen smiling and shaking hands. And the president and the two parties agreed to create a consultative body on livelihood-related matters, with the details to be finalized later. And the PPP leader raised concerns over the lack of national consensus on the reorganization plan and urged caution on prosecution reform, while President Lee said the opposition's views would be fully reflected. And of course, many issues remain, and one meeting won't immediately smooth out cooperation between the rival parties. And in fact, the DP plans to push for expanding the powers of the ongoing special counsel investigations at the upcoming plenary session this week. And Monday's event was definitely a first step toward cooperation, but how much progress they make on specific issues will likely shape the political landscape.
Indeed, Hayoung, thank you as always for coming in.
My pleasure. North Korea claims to have successfully conducted the final ground test for a new high-thrust solid-fuel engine, signaling its imminent reveal of a new intercontinental ballistic missile. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
North Korea, with leader Kim Jong-un's oversight, has conducted the final ground test for a new high-thrust solid-fuel engine for its Hwasong-20 ICBM. That's according to the North Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday. The report claimed the test was successful and quoted Kim as saying it heralds a momentous change for his nuclear forces. It also confirmed this was the 9th and final test in the engine's development, including details such as a maximum thrust of 1971 kilonewtons, and that the carbon fiber makes the engine lighter and more efficient. The news also comes a week after Kim inspected the motor's development ahead of his trip to China. An official at Seoul's Unification Ministry noted that the specific details were carried by the international-facing KCNA, but not the domestic-facing Nodong Shinmun newspaper, suggesting the message is intended for an external audience. Analysts expect the new intercontinental ballistic missile to be unveiled soon.
I believe they will reveal the actual missile on the 80th Party Foundation anniversary and likely conduct a test launch before the year's end to mark the completion of the 5-year plan, and as a celebratory launch for next year's 9th Party Congress.
The test timing, just after leader Kim Jong-un's return from China, is seen by analysts as a key part of Pyongyang's strategic messaging, especially as the KCNA also reported that Kim visited the construction site of a major hospital in North Korea and has stressed that building provincial hospitals is a top priority, calling it a vital project to provide people outside Pyongyang with advanced medical services.
While maintaining close ties with China and Russia, we must see the context here is to emphasize that it is an independent nation, not subordinate to these great powers, through its own nuclear capabilities. Therefore, conducting an advanced weapons test like this right after the China visit, and also giving guidance on a hospital construction, is an intention to show he is a tireless leader, working hard for both military and civil affairs.
Analysts also said this could be a strategic move before Kim sets up a meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. With the new ICBM reportedly capable of hitting American soil, it could be to elevate the regime's position prior to any talks with the U.S. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, over in the Middle East, Gaza City is under fresh evacuation orders from Israel. It's also been hit by more Israeli strikes in the past few days. Park Hyo-bin tells us more.
Israel's army on Tuesday morning issued its first order for the full evacuation of Gaza City ahead of an expanded ground operation in the north. Israeli defense minister said 30 towers had been torn down so far, accusing Hamas of turning them into hubs of military activity. This comes after Israel leveled another high-rise in Gaza on Monday, part of its push to seize control of the city. Gaza's health ministry said 65 people have been killed and more than 300 wounded by Israeli fire over the past 24 hours. The Israeli military has been targeting prominent high-rise buildings for 4 consecutive days, saying Hamas installed surveillance infrastructure inside them. Israel and the U.S. are both pressing Hamas to release the hostages and agree to a new ceasefire plan. The so-called Last Warning Initiative, unveiled by Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, outlines a negotiated end to the war with Israeli troops pulling out of Gaza once the hostages are freed and a ceasefire takes hold. Speaking in Hungary on Sunday, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar confirmed Israel had accepted the U.S. proposal.
President Trump said it clearly yesterday. Israel said yes to his proposal. We are ready to accept a full deal that would end the war based on the cabinet decision.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doubled down, demanding Hamas release all captives.
The war is also continuing in the Gaza Strip, where we will destroy Hamas, as we promised, and bring back our hostages, all of our hostages.
U.S. President Donald Trump also pressed Hamas, calling the situation a hell of a problem and urging the group to accept the deal.
I think we're going to have a deal on Gaza very soon. It's a hell of a problem. So they have hostages, but we have, let's say, 20 people, and we have about 38 bodies.
Trump also wrote on his Truth Social that everyone wants the hostages home and everyone wants this war to end. It is time for Hamas to accept. It remains unclear whether the ceasefire proposal will succeed. Netanyahu and Trump insist on hostage releases first, while Hamas demands a full ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli forces before freeing any captives. Park Hyubin, Arirang News.
Seoul is hosting an annual forum that seeks to share innovation strategies for future mobility, from autonomous vehicles to flying taxis, now all under an inclusive transport system. Our Moon Ji-young was there.
The future of transport and mobility is being shaped here in Seoul. The third edition of the Global Mobility Conference opened on Tuesday, bringing together experts from around the world to discuss how to create more inclusive, resilient, safe, and accessible transport systems. This forum, co-hosted by the Korean government and the OECD International Transport Forum, aims to map out innovative solutions to redefine future on the move.
Mobility is almost a blood system of society and the economy, and we need to take good care of that system as we move forward. We need to take a global approach to regulating mobility, and in this sense, the leadership of the Republic of Korea is extremely important.
Looking into how we might travel in the future, automaker Hyundai Motor stressed the need to prepare for an era where mobility becomes an essential utility, much like electricity is today.
Transportation in the future will involve self-moving mobility devices centrally managed by the cloud. These devices will be interconnected, with cities serving as the infrastructure. We are developing them not merely as vehicles for transport, but as AI learning machines capable of continuously enhancing user value and improving device functionality.
The Korean Transport Ministry has highlighted the importance of bolstering policies to ensure mobility rights and inclusivity in the era of future mobility. The two-day conference also includes discussions on the commercialization of autonomous driving and urban air mobility, as well as addressing the mobility rights of disadvantaged groups. Global institutions saw today's conference as a meaningful opportunity to share innovation strategies for future mobility with the world and strengthen the foundation for global cooperation. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
Rain has been continuing today mainly in the southern parts of the country, and there will be more rain until tomorrow morning. As for the amount of rainfall, more than 80 millimeters of heavy rain will be concentrated on Jeju Island, the south coast, and around Chirisan Mountain. About 5 to 60 millimeters of rain is forecast in other southern regions, and 5 millimeters in Chungcheongnam-do province. All the heatwave warnings have been lifted in inland areas as a cold and dry northern wind blew and the heat eased off. Today's daytime temperatures were 1 to 5 degrees lower than yesterday in the southern parts of the country. However, heatwave advisories are still in place in some parts of Jeju Island. Tomorrow morning will start cool at 20 degrees Celsius in Seoul, Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju, 18 degrees in Daejeon. Highs will go up to 32 degrees in Seoul, 29 degrees in Busan and Jeju. Rain will continue on Jeju Island on Friday, and it will rain all over the country again on Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.